within that context of chaste and chaser, we have this like weird predator-prey adversarial dynamic where the prey doesn't want to get caught because that means getting eaten. Like, it's like violence and like aggression in a way that is weird, honestly. So I think shifting that mindset, this is just you have an interest in this person and you want to get to know them. That's all it is. It's not about like acquiring them or the conquest, which patriarchal, white supremacist, like frameworks, language around dating. It is really just about expressing interest and a desire to get to know somebody better. That is all it is. Hello and welcome to the Eva Bloom podcast. I'm your host, Eva Bloom, non-binary queer late bloomer coach, inclusive sex educator, and community facilitator. And I'm so stoked you're here. The Eva Bloom podcast is all about giving you the tools and frameworks to make sense of your coming out journey, build confidence in your queerness and dating and beyond, as well as a little bit of personal storytelling on my part to help you feel a little bit less alone on the whole journey. When I'm not supporting late bloomers in their confidence and dating journey, you can find me reading a sapphic, fantasy, or sci-fi novel, starting a new craft project, or playing board games with friends, which we're doing tonight. I'm so excited. There are new episodes of Eva Bloom every single week on Monday, so please subscribe if you aren't already. You can subscribe on YouTube if you like a video podcast. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you prefer to listen. And we have new episodes coming out every week, all about second adolescence, coming out, queer dating, bisexuality, lesbianism, queerness, all that beautiful stuff. So stick around. This week, we are talking about dating, which is one of my favorite things to talk about, and I think one of your favorite things to listen to, because last season's dating episode was one of our most popular, which makes sense. If you are a newbie to queer dating, there is a lot of new stuff that you are experiencing. Today, we're talking about how queer dating culture can be really different from a lot of the things that you were taught dating should be in a cis-hetero context. Growing up, watching movies, reading books, seeing friends and parents and people around you following these very specific hetero scripts around dating, when you think you might want to start dating women or queer people, it can feel like a big shock, honestly, to be falling outside of these frameworks. And there's a lot of habits and patterns that we need to unlearn and can get stuck in, thinking about, okay, this is the only way to date, when in reality, in queer contexts, a lot of the hetero stuff doesn't apply. So we're going to be talking about how to unlearn cis heteronormativity in dating, what is the stuff that does translate from the hetero world, and what is the stuff that doesn't? What are the fun things about queer dating that's different, and what are some of the challenges that are unique to queer dating? Before we get started, I want to let you know that my 8-week group program, Queer Enough, is back again for the fall. It is running from September 30th to November 18th. So if you're watching this, you can come join. It is the program for late bloomers, for sapphics who are questioning, maybe you've been out as queer in some way to yourself or a partner for 10 years, but you want to actually start dating queer people for the first time, or you think you might be a little bit gayer than you initially thought you were. We're going to talk about queer time. We're going to talk about how to find friends and community, figuring out labels, releasing shame, and building your beautiful queer life. So come on down, join us. You can learn more and join at evabloom.ca/queer enough. To kick off this conversation about unlearning cis heteronormativity as you enter the queer dating world, I want to talk a little bit about what are the expectations around dating that we get from straight settings, and reflecting a little bit on my own experience dating in the straight world, because that has been a huge portion of my own dating experience as a late bloomer. I was in a relationship with a cis man for 3 years. Most of the dating that I did at college was with men before I realized that I was queer. So I've put in some hours straight dating, even though it has been a while. And let's talk about what no longer applies in a queer dating context. Putting myself back in the headspace of straight dating, I remember really not wanting to like scare men off and wanting to kind of like tone down myself, maybe make myself a little bit more palatable, more feminine. Yeah, not wanting to like come in like guns a-blazing in terms of politics, which I think now, 10 years later, 10 years from when I was doing that, I don't know whether people who are dating men still have that freedom to be a little bit laissez-faire about politics. I wouldn't do that. But there is this pressure to tone yourself down because maybe men have done a little bit less work thinking about human rights or politics. And there's this idea of like, oh, you'll turn a man off if you talk about politics off the top, or if you get into some like niche interests, or if you act really like brazen, if you're not super feminine. And that you can see how with just starting there, that is not something that translates to queer dating. When you're queer dating, largely your pool of daters are people who have done a lot of work to understand at least the politics around queerness to come out in themselves. That's often a gateway for people, at least whether that is through feminism, being like a woman or a person of a marginalized gender, and being queer, an invitation to do some more of that work in their own lives of understanding systems of oppression and understanding how they want to support the dismantling of oppressive systems in our world. So there is a baseline understanding, I think, when it comes to queer people, where you don't have to baby people. In terms of, okay, this is your political understanding, and these are the kind of political actions that I expect from another partner. So off the top, that is different. Also, in terms of femininity, wanting to play up your femininity, whether that's like choosing photos with specific, like highlighting specific feminine features, or like not doing things that society deems as masculine, like not initiating as much, not like being the person who reaches out every time about like, okay, we're setting up this date, this is where we're gonna go, all this stuff, like wanting to kind of step back because you don't want to turn off the other person because they expect you to be feminine, and also wanting to preserve the other person's masculinity. I feel like this really brings us very quickly to the crux of a lot of the differences between hetero dating frameworks and queer dating frameworks. If you are a feminist, if you are queer, bisexual, pan, dating men, and you've done a lot of work to unlearn these different gender roles around the man needs to be the one that pays, the man that needs to be the one that initiates, the man's the one that needs to ask you out, he needs to be the more masculine one, somebody else needs to be the more feminine one. There needs to be kind of this separation around your different interests and lives and social status. So the idea of like boys' night and girls' night, and he introduces you to sports and you introduce him to housewives, like this idea of very gendered social dynamics as well. Also in terms of like the home and who is cleaning things and who is changing the light bulbs and mowing the lawn, who is doing the emotional labor, who's doing the physical labor. It's all like labor. Who is the one that has a higher sex drive? Who's the one that has the like less higher sex drive? Even if you have unlearned a lot of this stuff, going into queer dating, it can be hard to release yourself from it. And fundamentally, I think when it comes to hetero context of dating, again, even if you've done a lot to unlearn it, there is so much embedded into hetero dating that is about preserving each other's femininity and masculinity within this cis hetero binary. That through the dating process, you are engaging in these rituals that prop up each other's binary masculinity and femininity. You are doing everything you can to say, oh, I'm going to make sure that you feel secure in your masculinity. I'm going to do everything to make sure that I feel secure in my femininity. And it is kind of like a faux pas within a hetero dating context to do anything that might disrupt that. So, for example, if you like orders food for your partner who's a man, if a guy on a first date orders a fruity drink, that is breaking the contract of the masculinity and the femininity. And it becomes so much about that and about preserving your partner's masculinity, both by the things that he does and the things that either you do or don't do to encroach on that. It becomes so much of that, become so much of that you lose sense of who you are as human beings beyond your gender expectations and boxes. That if your partner doesn't like beer and only wants to drink fruity drinks, that doesn't have anything to say about whether he's a good or a bad person. If you are the one who likes food and knows the best restaurants in town and you're a woman and you want to make all the reservations, great. So I think a lot of it, honestly, in terms of unlearning cis heteronormativity in dating, comes down to seeing if we can humanize each other and see each other in our wholeness as human beings, and not just these like check boxes around, okay, dating needs to be a masculine person and a feminine person come in and are these opposites, and preserving that dynamic, trying to be like, okay, this is a whole human being. What are their strengths? What are their preferences? What are the things that they're working on? And also assuming that both people have done work on themselves. And then that's a foundation, that both people have done work on themselves, that they're invested in their own well-being, growth, unlearning their traumas, like healing, learning about the world, that is a basis for engaging with one another. And that we're not doing a tit for tat thing where it's like, oh, this person is doing that and therefore I'm going to put up with a bunch of crappy behavior because the bar is so low that so few men actually are doing this foundational work. So I think in terms of moving from a hetero dating context to a queer dating context, it is shifting that expectation that in terms of what somebody brings to the table, you don't have to be doing as much of like a tallying, because there is a basis that's already provided for more queer people. And maybe that's based on our socialization. Many of us socialized as women. We were expected to have to do a certain level of being able to take care of ourselves and manage our own lives and administration and emotional labor. That is kind of like something that just exists at a level that's a little bit different from men. Ooh, we really I promise I did make a plan for this podcast, but we are going to be dipping and weaving throughout this journey. With that, I think another piece that is kind of foundational in terms of a hetero dating context that no longer exists in a queer dating context, that can sometimes make people reel a little bit or feel a little bit of culture shock, is that a lot of hetero dating contexts feel adversarial. Like you versus the person you're dating. And I think that comes down to this conditioning and these scripts that you're both trying to get things from each other, but you're also told that you need to withhold that from each other. The script is that you're both kind of playing a game where men are told that they're trying to get sex out of the women that they're dating, but that they should withhold financial access or they should withhold emotions from the people they're dating. And women are told that they should be trying to get financial and emotional access from the men they're dating, but they should withhold sex. So that you're kind of in this adversarial mode where you are against each other in this attempt to preserve each other's masculinity and femininity and not be played in trying to protect yourself against people who might try and manipulate you or manipulate through the knowledge that people are trying to do these gender roles and preserve their masculinity and femininity. And being in an adversarial state is so challenging and really counterintuitive to trying to build authentic and deep connection and it doesn't feel good or supportive. But I think if you're so used to being in that mode of being in an adversarial dynamic with the people you're trying to date, it can feel really confusing to be like, oh, I don't need to withhold emotionality from this person, or I don't need to withhold sex and intimacy from this person, or I don't need to test this person and say, okay, show me XYZ financial or emotional, whatever, in little bits so that I know I can trust you. Queer dating is not like that. Queer dating just isn't like that. You're on the same team. It feels like there's more of a sense of you're both on the same team, you're both doing your best. And of course, there are going to be people who might have bad intentions or be manipulative. But for the most part, there isn't this sense of like, okay, I'm so nervous of being burned by these patriarchal dating systems that I have to play a certain game. You can actually just show up as yourself and be a little bit more egalitarian, and everybody's pitching in what works for them and their strengths, and you're both coming to the table to learn and be vulnerable and connect. I think another trope or script that's really common in straight dating is this idea of opposites attract. That is to say that, oh, it's maybe good for me if I'm a woman who's a little bit more emotional and like free spirited and like artistic and cares about politics. Maybe it's good for me to have somebody who's different from me, who's more logical thinking and more like grounded and interested in different things. And I think that that's bullshit. I think that there's a lot of research that shows that relationships, both friendship and romantic, oftentimes work when we are similar to one another. Like attracts like. And I think even when we know that this idea of men are logical and women are emotional, even when we know it's bullshit, it can be easy to think these things around opposites attract when it's like, no, 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 no. All human beings have emotions and have logic. This is not a gendered thing. And emotions tell us information. And being closed off to emotions is actually like dangerous for your well-being. So I think within queer dating, there's more of this idea of course, I enjoy spending time with people who are similar to me in my friendships. And I can spend time romantically with people who are also interested in similar things to me. We can share hobbies. We are both like aligned in terms of our personalities or our approaches to life or our political alignment, that having sameness can actually be a strength as opposed to trying to convince yourself that this relationship with a man who's like quite different from you is actually what you need because opposites attract. Which I will also say throughout this whole podcast, not all heterodynamics. Not all heterodynamics and not all people. Not every iteration of this is a toxic iteration of this, and there are lots of different versions. And I will also say that there are so many queer dynamics where people are very different in personality. But I do think there is a shift in terms of there being maybe more fundamental sameness, or there being more of a normalization of our romantic relationship as an experience. There is more shared hobbies, there's more shared foundational like similarities, and that's really beautiful. Obviously, my girlfriend and I are not the picture perfect or like the model queer couple, but there are so many things that we have in common. Like we both care a lot about art and culture. We both really love drag. We love music. We love books. And that is really like essential to what nourishes us as human beings. We have different music tastes, so we share those things. We have different book tastes, we share those things. But foundationally, there's a lot of similarities and also things that we're still learning from each other. Again, versus the idea of like, oh my gosh, my boyfriend loves sports, I hate sports, whatever. My girlfriend loves housewives, I hate housewives. That we've normalized really disliking each other's hobbies and that being okay, when I think in so many romantic relationships, it can be enriching to share these things and to, at the bare minimum, uplift and support the things that your partner loves. Moving to our next category of straight dating culture and scripts, and how does that apply to queer dating? Let's talk about the idea of being chased and being the chaser as a dynamic. So many of my clients talk to me about, okay, throughout my whole life, I've been told that my role in dating is to be chased. And that is how I support my femininity and how I validate other people's masculinity, by being attractive, by maybe appealing to the male gaze in the clothes I'm wearing, performing beauty in a very specific, like heteronormative way, and that's my role, and that men are going to approach me and ask me out. And so many clients of mine say, okay, when that dynamic disappears and I want to ask out women, I have had no experience learning how to do that because I've been the one who's been approached my whole life. And I do think that that is a shift, having to learn how to be the one that approaches and be the one that initiates. But even within that context of chased and chaser, we have this like weird predator-prey adversarial dynamic where the prey doesn't like get caught because that means getting eaten. Like, it's like violence and like aggression in a way that is weird, honestly. So I think shifting that mindset from this is just you have an interest in this person and you want to get to know them. That's all it is. It's not about like acquiring them or the conquest, which patriarchal, white supremacist, like frameworks, language around dating, alert, alert. It is really just about expressing interest and a desire to get to know somebody better. That is all it is. And practicing being the initiator, even if initiator feels too overwhelming, just like telling somebody that their outfit is really cool, having a conversation about that, maybe they compliment your outfit, and you ask to follow them on Instagram. That's not, I don't think that's that scary. Or if you see somebody at an event and you start talking to them about how it's both your first time there, you have a cute little conversation, and you say, hey, I think you're really beautiful. I had a great time I had a great time chatting with you. I would love to get your Instagram and maybe we can connect and go on a date. Getting the opportunity to practice that as much as possible, I think is going to be really helpful, and really making that mindset shift away from acquisition or conquest or assuming that this person owes you something, releasing that, and just being about, can I show interest and get to know somebody, I think is a huge shift that can make it feel less scary and can help you unlearn the unhelpful cis-heteronormative patriarchal white supremacist framework around dating. Another thing I want to talk about is money and how that's different. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but we're in a cute little recession. Not so cute, very scary, economic uncertainty. And so I've seen people and have had conversations with clients and friends around it's really hard to unlearn this idea that men are quote unquote providers and that men are a financial solution to me feeling my own economic uncertainty right now, which is real. And that is a gender norm. This idea that men are providers and women are more providers in terms of an emotional sense, or that it's okay for you to be making less money or for you to be a homemaker, and that there's this difference. And that can show up in terms of having expectations that men will pay for a date, that is like the romantic and quote unquote chivalrous thing to do. So somebody pays for a date and that it's unromantic or tacky to split the bill. And I understand that financial uncertainty is so scary. And for many of us, compet cis-heteronormativity is a place of survival. It is how we are able to survive through the world by using these systems to our advantage. And I am absolutely not shaming anybody who is doing that or is in that mode. I have so much love and care for you. And also, if you do want to be queer dating, if you want to have relationships with queer people, if you want to validate your own authentic queerness, this is a shift that there isn't this sense provider and homemaker in a queer context, that it is a little bit more equitable in terms of maybe you are splitting dates 50-50. I think it's really romantic to like swap who is treating the other person. So maybe one person buys dinner one day and the next person buys dinner the other day. I also think that there's nothing unromantic about splitting stuff 50-50. The only thing that I'm like, we're a couple. We're a couple, so I'm buying. This is not a friend, but also I'm like, we've smooched at the table, so we're a couple. Even just like treating each other to smaller things that are a little bit more financially accessible, like maybe you buy coffee or you buy a little treat as like a gift for a partner, can be other ways that you can financially treat somebody in a way that's a little bit more equitable and less hugely like divisive down these different like gender roles or partner lines. Another thing I want to talk about that might feel a little bit different moving from a hetero dating context into a queer dating context is around masculinity and femininity. There can be this idea of, okay, all the models I've seen for dating or romantic relationships involve one masculine person and one feminine person. So what would it look like or feel like to be in a dynamic that's different? Or kind of, is that even possible? How does this work? Where you have maybe two masculine people or you have two feminine people in a dynamic. How does that work? And I want to say that it really isn't that complicated. It really isn't that different. Again, like you're just showing up as full people who have different skills, different strengths, different personalities, and it doesn't really matter so much around trying to preserve the specific idea of masculinity and femininity, because queer masculinity and femininity is much more fluid, is much more DIY. We get to decide, what does it mean to be masculine? What does it mean to be feminine? There's this joke that like, okay, masculine people are the ones that have all the pockets and a feminine person has a little purse. And so the masculine person keeps all the stuff in their pockets. So they're kind of ready to go and like a provider in that sense, in terms of like whatever you need. Like I've got it in my pockets. I got the carabiner on. I think that's like a very beautiful and like sweet example of queer masculinity. And then also when I think of my girlfriend is a femme, and part of that femininity to her and to us is this idea of like, she has her little to-go bag in her purse that has everything you might need. She has chapstick, she has Band-Aids, she has ibuprofen, she has a little mending kit, she has her Swiss Army knife. And so that to me and to us feels so feminine. I'm like, oh, they're the femme, like this is how they're showing up in their femininity in this relationship. So I think that's one example of how, femininity and masculinity is more fluid, and that there isn't this same rigidness of like, if I am going to be the person who makes you breakfast, what does that have to say about our genders? It's just, I'm the person who likes to cook, and so I'm making you breakfast. Or if you have a very feminine partner who loves to do all the physical stuff around the house, like yard maintenance, like changing all the light bulbs, that doesn't break apart either of the conceptions of femininity and masculinity. That's just part of her femininity. And that's like so hot and sexy and really cool that we can have this fluidity and expansiveness. And also there are a lot of queer people that don't really resonate with femininity, period, or masculinity, period, that there's more of movement in between or not really feeling connected to either. And you can still date and be in a romantic and dating context, even if you don't super strongly identify with femininity and masculinity. That dating doesn't need to be a ritual where we affirm each other's binary gender in that way. In terms of moving forward, how do you unlearn cis heteronormativity in dating? I think a big part of it might be thinking about, what does masculinity and femininity mean to you? Like, what does being a woman mean to you? Or what does being not binary mean to you? Or what brings you gender euphoria? And what makes you feel good in your gender? I think that might be something to explore, and being like, okay, in what ways am I expecting a partner to validate my gender? And how much of that is coming from cis heteronormative rules and scripts that I don't need anymore? even something as simple as like, I want a partner who's taller than me. This gender norm of like your partner, if you're a woman, your partner needs to be taller than you. That is about affirming each other's gender. That like, I want a partner who's taller, so I feel feminine, which means dainty and small and petite and thin, which is fatphobic and white supremacist. So thinking about like, okay, do I really need my gender affirmed by somebody being taller than me? Are there other ways that I could feel affirmed in my gender so that I don't block off a whole group of people who I could potentially be smooching? And also, is that a lot of weight to put on our genetics of who is taller, who is smaller? Does that actually really deeply feel tied to my womanhood? And I think also shifting and maybe reflecting on, okay, outside of gender, what are my skills? What are my strengths? What are my preferences that I bring into relationships? Can I think more about that as me as a human being and them as a human being as outside of gender a little bit more? Also, I think really thinking about your friendships, because in many ways, I think queer romantic and sexual dynamics can oftentimes mirror your friendships a little bit more. And again, I think people are starting to realize like, I would never accept treatment from a friend the way I would from a partner. I would never be friends with the person whose political views are so different than mine and who wasn't like on the path to learning and growing. Why would I do that with a partner? So starting to think about like, okay, who are the long-term friendships you have in your life? What are the elements of those that work? What are the personalities of that person? What are the different behaviors that they do? The lifestyle things that match up that allow you to create a long-lasting and supportive connection, and looking to that as a model for your queer relationships and connections too. Everybody just give me a round of applause because I've said so many smart things today and I feel sick, and that's huge. That's huge. I have talked so much today about unlearning cis heteronormativity in dating, critiquing some straight scripts and frameworks of how we are taught to show up in dating, and a lot of that comes down into the bedroom too. We have this idea of somebody needs to be the gatekeeper and somebody needs to get past our defenses in order to like have sex with us, and that's wild. It relates so much to slut shaming, this idea of women's sexuality needing to be pure, and us judging a sexually active or liberated woman as something that is being dirty, so she needs to preserve that. Oh my gosh, that we have all these expectations around pretending like we don't want it, as opposed to just showing up as two equal people that want to give and receive pleasure from each other. And this can absolutely show up in the bedroom too. And I think reflecting on the fact that your sexuality is not shameful, it's not dirty. Sharing it with somebody is not shameful or dirty. And nobody's trying to get something out of you or doesn't think badly of you. Isn't sexist around women's sexuality, that it's actually like a safe and equitable place. And one big way that men can get stressed is around sex toys in the bedroom. This idea that if you bring a sex toy into the bedroom, that is threatening somebody's masculinity. But the truth is that sex toys are tools for pleasure, that they are literally designed to help you feel good, to be creative, to think outside the box. And I think sex toys are a huge way that you can unlearn cis heteronormativity in dating. And that's why I'm so excited that this podcast is in partnership with Wet for Her, which is a spicy toy company created by lesbians for queer people. And as a lesbian myself, I'm so stoked to be working with them. And I want to showcase one of their toys, which is the Touch Me, which is a pressure vibrator with 7 different vibrational modes. Let me pull out this bad boy. Oh my god. Whoa. This is the Touch Me from Wet for Her, and it is a pressure vibrator. So what that means is that there's a little pad here that goes and like physically presses very swiftly against wherever you want to place it on your body. So it's a really unique, different type of sensation that, again, when we think about the different ways to experience pleasure beyond penetration, things like suction toys, things like pressure toys, really provide a lot of creativity and expansiveness for what's possible. So This toy is, for one, super soft. All the Wet for Hers toys are some of the softest toys I have ever experienced, which I feel like you can tell they're made by sapphic people who care about sensuality and a positive user experience of what feels good. And it also fits so well in your hand. So you can really use it all over the body, on yourself, on another partner. I really love the like little wings here to kind of cup around your bits if you're putting it downstairs or on all sorts of different parts of your body. It is rechargeable, it's waterproof, so it's a really incredible toy. That brings us to our segment of the podcast where I share what I'm loving right now, what books I'm reading, what music I'm listening to, what stuff I'm cooking, and my favorite creators right now. So in terms of what I am reading, I am almost done reading An Island Princess Starts a Scandal, which honestly, if you are coming from a hetero dating context, it might be fun because there is a little bit of a financial element, but also there is a lot of generosity and lots of examples of what it would look like to be two people working towards each other's goals in a very equitable way. So I think it's pretty cool. Also, it's spicy. I fully believe that the main character is either a Leo or a Sagittarius. So that is the energy. She goes to 1800s France and she's looking to get debauched. She's looking to smooch down. She's looking for her sapphic fantasy. And it's awesome. The other book that I'm about to start is Crush by Tegan and Sarah, which is a YA, I think even middle grade graphic novel. I read the first book from them, and my girlfriend's going to bring the second book over to me tonight because I love a graphic novel and I really love the first book. And I think it's really cool as a Canadian lesbian to support other Canadian lesbians making cool stuff. And it's just a really beautiful exploration of middle school and early queer exploration and adolescent coming of age. In terms of who I'm listening to right now, I am on to Lily Young. I feel like she had such an explosion that I kind of did the hipster thing where I was like, oh, I don't want to listen to her because she's so popular, but I'm obsessed with her new song, Dealer. Oh, it's so catchy. And her voice is incredible. I love her new song Dealer and I'm Not Like This Anymore. I think her storytelling is just so immersive and beautiful, and the music is so catchy and fun. So I wish that her concert to Toronto wasn't so expensive, but I'm really happy and I'm really excited for the new album to come out and listen to more of her music. In terms of what I'm cooking lately, again, I don't know if I've said this before, but I made a little kimchi jjigae tonight, which I love Korean food. A lot of it is very plant-based, friendly. So I love a little kimchi jjigae. I know I'm going to be making it a lot for the winter. It's super simple. It's like kimchi soup with some soft tofu and rice, and it's just really nice. And in terms of a creator that I'm loving, I don't know if this counts, but Dimension 20's new show, Cloudward Ho, is coming to an end. Dimension 20 is a D&D actual live play show, which I'm simply obsessed with. It has been my pride and joy for many years. My favorite television I've ever watched, and this new season is like a steampunk adventure story. So if you like Atlantis, if you like Treasure Planet, that's what it's all about. It includes a trans femme main character, trans woman, played by a non-binary actor, Allie Beardsley. Oh, it's just an absolute blast. I've been loving that. But that brings us to the end of our wonderful episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't already, rate us 5 stars, subscribe. Please join us for Queer Enough. If you want to keep unlearning cis heteronormativity, not only in your dating life, but also in your friends, your relationships, in your own identity, in community, and beyond, I would love to have you in Queer Enough. We are doing that deep healing and unlearning work, but also having fun with friends. And it's really beautiful. So you can come and join us right now. The program is starting September 30th to November 18th, and you can come and join us. Enrollment is open. We'd love to have you at evabloom.ca/queerenough. But until next time, keep curious, stay blooming, and see you in the next episode.